Okay, so I was able to get my dog to sit on the bed because she was jumping up on the bed. I'm gonna make this brighter. I was like, I thought about it. I'm like, I need to create a jingle that's like that says, "Let's." Because before I started recording this, I was singing to myself, and I said like, "Let's go talk about things that make us feel uncomfortable." Because that's what I'm doing essentially is not really so uncomfortable. I've always been someone I never wanted to shy away from topics. At least for me, I wanted to like research things that kind of I was curious about. I've always been curious about a lot of things. Um, but today I want to talk about forgiveness and closure. And is it necessary to forgive in order to heal and move on from something? And the first thing that came to my mind is I know Taylor Swift did an interview. I don't know if it was Barbara Walters or with somebody or someone else from Good Morning America, but she said something really poignant. Um, Says you don't have to forgive and forget. If I recall, it was this one. I was when because she always wears her signature red lipstick. But there's if you've never watched it, it's actually a really good interview where she mentions things. She said, people go on and on about like you have to forgive and forget to move past something. No, you don't. You don't have to forgive and you don't have to forget to move on. You can move on without any of those things happening. You just become indifferent and then you move on. That's what she said. I was trying to remember. So it's actually this. So it's this interview where she's wearing like the red lipstick and, um, and it's funny because just to go a little bit background of why I'm talking about this. I think we've all been hurt by somebody in our lives or something, that's happened to us that we have no control over. We can't control how people behave, right? We can't control how people perceive us. I mean, you could to an extent, right? The way your online persona, the way you carry yourself. Like if anyone looked up my channel and they're like, okay, these are the things that this woman values and cares about. She loves her dog. I'm really big on morals and virtues. I struggle in terms of sex and stuff. I've come a really long way in terms of that, like coming to grips with not feeling guilty or sinful for wanting to enjoy pleasure in that way. Because I don't know, that's the way I just grew up, like thinking that it was like a sin if you were engaged in like premarital sex or something like that. But now I've definitely can say I feel more confident now. I just sometimes I still struggle with that, but that's not really what I'm going to talk about today. I wanted to talk about I have these two books that I bought a few years ago. I have yet to read them because I wasn't ready to. This one's called, can I put this like this? This one's called the Little Book of Forgiveness. And then this one's called, I love books. I'm very big. There was a moment of time, like I used to just sit in the bookstore and just like, yeah, that's just what I did. So this one says, Let Forgiveness Set You Free. And this is like an actual workbook. I did start it and um, I got up to page 41. I might actually start getting into it because I feel like energetically, the energy of forgiveness, the vibration of it, you're basically like surrendering and you're relinquishing control of a situation because there's some things you can't control. Like literally, I've learned there are some things that you cannot control in life, no matter like if I could snap my fingers and I could solve world hunger or poverty, I would in a second. I'd be like everyone would have enough. There would be no more war. There'd be no more fighting. Um, Everyone would be happy. People would smile at each other more. Like when you walk down the street, people would like smile at one another because that doesn't happen. So, I try to do that, which, Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. So, and you can't affect mass change like on a global scale. So you can just start with like incrementally and you start with yourself. So, um, but yeah, if I could, I would. And I would try to help all the people that are hurting because here's the thing, what I learned. Um, um, Hurt people, this is I think where I'm going to expand my window here. Hurt people hurt people. What do I mean by that? More often than not, if you look at the profile of someone, let's say, God forbid, a mass murderer, a serial killer. I'm trying to think, criminals, right? People who, or even bullies, like in the more like the smaller sense, like if you're talking like in a suburban town, like you're in school and you have a bully, because we all go through that, right? What happens is if you look at and this is the hard part about being empathic, I take it a step further, and I don't want to excuse people's behavior for people that treat people poorly. I'm not going to say, oh, it's okay, they're hurting, they were abused when they were a child, they came from a broken home, you know. um, they exercise power and authority and dominance over other people to feel an inflated sense of self, to gain some superiority, right? Because usually that's what happens. When someone picks on somebody, they want to push someone down to make themselves feel better. Because usually if that happens, if when someone's either envious or jealous of someone else, because generally speaking, people care about other people's well-being, right? They don't want to play mind games with them. They're civil. At least on the most part, they're civil, right? On the surface level. But if you ever meet someone who does deliberately, intentionally try to hurt you, whether it's like psychologically manipulate or gaslight you, whether it's in a romantic situation, whether it's in a work situation, maybe it's your own family. Families do this to each other. Like legitimately, there are mothers and fathers who do this to their children, and vice versa. There's children who will do it to their family. But either way, I am convinced that I think people who hurt other people, it does stem from somewhere. Now, on the other sense, there are people who don't have any moral regard for anybody else's feelings, right? Like they're apathetic. Well, apathy is basically the absence of empathy. When you're empathetic towards somebody, you put yourself in their shoes and you care about how that person feels. Like for instance, usually like with my neighbors, anywhere, not just here, anywhere, I want to be conscientious and mindful. I do sing a lot here, and sometimes I'm cooking really late, and I'm like the other day I was pounding chicken with with a hammer because I don't have a meat tenderizer, so I was like, I hope this isn't too loud, but it is what it is. I haven't had any complaints about that, but I am conscientious, and the normal, typical human being will care about someone else's feelings, right? Because that's just who we are, right? And if you don't have that empathy piece, that compassion piece, then more often than not, that person or you, if you're watching this, if you do have it, you may be operating from a narcissistic mentality. Narcissism, I've said this before in another video, comes from the Greek god Narcissus, right? There's actually a flower called Narcissus. It's when Narcissus fell in love with his own reflection. So basically, it's this idea that, and there's also covert narcissism too, where Taylor Swift mentions, did my covert narcissism disguise as altruism, something, something. I felt that was really vulnerable because I don't picture her as being covertly narcissistic, but she knows herself really well, and she disclosed that in a song, or I think it was in the song Antihero. But there is that as well. But there is narcissism. It's usually when you have this inflated sense of self, where you're really actually not inflated. I take it back. It's not an inflated sense of self in terms of pride and ego, like in a pompous sense. It's that you're always focused on how will something benefit you. You don't really think about other people's point of view. You look at it, how can it benefit you? And yeah, that's basically from narcissistic. Now, what's bad is that usually those people who are narcissistic, that kind of trait, their outward behavior is synonymous with that negative um, character trait or personality trait. And that could lead itself to being someone who, let's say you're in the workplace, a narcissist would be someone who tries to undermine somebody else in order to get a promotion. A narcissist would be someone who, let's just stick with that scenario, that a narcissist would be someone who makes up a lie about somebody or a rumor in order for for them to get ahead. And you've seen this, I'm sure, in many movies where they depict this, where, someone's up for a promotion and the other person, there's a good movie, oh my gosh, it's not about a promotion or work. It's the Anne Hathaway with Kate Hudson, and they're getting married, and they want to have, like, I forgot why, but they get at each other's throats, and they try to like destroy each other's wedding days, or they, I don't know, I don't remember, but basically, so that's a really good depiction of narcissism on both of their ends, because instead of caring about their friend, they actually go at butt heads with them and go head to head, right? um but usually I think the ones who are the bullies and things like that, they're usually the narcissists, because if they cared about your feelings, they would never do anything to gaslight you, manipulate you, hurt you in that way. They treat you as an equal. They treat you with compassion. They treat you with respect and kindness. So, yeah, that's kind of, I think, if you want to understand the underpinnings of behavior psychology, why certain people are lead themselves to a certain way of being or behavior, it's because they probably have narcissistic, God forbid, sociopathic tendencies. Sociopaths, literally, they have no remorse. It's very interesting. I would love to see what, like, from a, if you took an fMRI or a regular, there's fMRI is a functional MRI or a regular MRI, and you took an image of the brain, and you tried to figure out what centers of the brain light up in, like, someone who's sociopathic versus, or a psychopath versus, like, an empath, or things like that. Just, it's just because for me, it's like, to operate without the absence of compassion is so foreign to me. Like, I'm someone, I try to demonstrate that in every fiber of my being. And if, let me tell you, if I ever come off as cross or cold with somebody, they must have really pissed me off, because I am, like, nice to everybody. There's a quote that it says, like, if I'm, like, I'm nice to you, but, like, I'm a nice person, but if whatever, if I'm mean to you, then you must have really, like, pissed me off. And it's so true. Um, if I can find that quote, I will. But um, yeah, I think the reason why I wanted to mention narcissism and I wanted to mention, like, bullying and stuff like that is because usually when you offer forgiveness, you have to forgive somebody. It happens as a result of being hurt, right? Um, that hurt can stem from a variety of things. It could be something someone said directly to you, to your face. It could be something indirectly said about you. Um, it could be someone who lied to you about something. Um, Someone who leaves you out of a certain thing. I've had that happen to me where I've been left out of certain things, like when I was growing up in school and things like that. Um, it could be people making fun of you, making fun of you in different ways, because a lot of people do that. A lot of people make fun of people because they feel better about themselves when they do so. Like, think of how evil you have to be to sit there. Like, anybody who makes fun of someone with, let's say, Down syndrome, or, you know, um, like a child with muscular dystrophy or cerebral palsy, someone that has to sit in a wheelchair, a child that's, or like, if you, there's children that are born with spina bifida, that have to sit, they have to have, surgery later on, and they also are wheelchair bound. Um, Someone with a speech impediment could be made fun of. Someone could be made fun of just for simply being different. There's numerous things, right? But there's numerous ways someone could hurt you. Someone could physically hurt you. Someone could be raped. Someone could be molested. Someone could have money stolen from them. Um, Someone could be wrongfully murdered or convicted of something and they're innocent. Someone could be, um, there's so many things. Um, but anyways, there's usually, it stems from being hurt about something. Now, coping through that hurt is one thing. I'm not going to really discuss that right now. I'm kind of discussing the point of where you're at. Like, are you ready for forgiveness? So, like I said, Taylor Swift said, which I find really interesting, that she said that you don't have to forgive and forget to move on. You can move on without any of those things happening. You just become indifferent. Um, there's a song that she sings. I forgot. It was one of the songs I loved. One of her first songs, and it was like she basically says, "I become in." I forgot what it's called, but it was one of her songs that I loved off her album, and it was she said something. She's like, "I just became indifferent," and I can't believe I can't. And I used to listen to this all the time. It was such a good song. I think it's off of her album Lover. I'm sorry, I have to look this up now. I forgot that you existed. That's the song. I forgot that you existed. And I think that was kind of a jab to someone like her former lovers or something, one of her former lovers or boyfriends that like mistreated her in some way, um, or was a jerk to her. So, she basically says, I became indifferent. And it's, for me, I will say though that, I don't know, it's interesting because I've, I've, I've tried to forgive certain people who've done certain things to me. Like, and when I tell you the heart, it runs deep. Um, to this day, sometimes I go, what really happened? Even though I have a good idea of like what happened, I'll get maybe a little bit into my situation, not too much. I'm really scared to actually talk about. I've recorded a video already about it, but I'm kind of like scared to put it up there because I just don't want to taint. I created a YouTube channel to help people cope, and I'm sorry if I cry, but um, that's why I did. And mind you, I never thought I would be because it's really vulnerable to sit there and record yourself and talk about your day, what you do, and give you a real life glimpse into what my life is like. Um, and how it kind of like I was riding really high, and then all of a sudden, because of, I was gonna say one lie or someone that decided to do something really egregious to me, everything just kind of just shifted and changed. Um, and I went from having everything to almost nothing over the span of 3 years. And maybe I'll give a little bit of a background and to show you that you can go through a lot of shit and you can still come out of it strong. Um, I'm going to try to choose my words carefully because I don't want to say, I'm not going to go too much into detail, but long story short is basically I was a victim of like bad hacking and stalking and like cyberbullying. You would say, oh, it's so whatever, like go change your phone. It wasn't like that. It was every single, I tried to get a new phone. I tried to, I got new numbers. I have, there's email addresses that I don't even like realize. Like I've had so many email addresses that, I don't even remember some, like, I don't remember. Thank goodness for Gmail. Gmail's free. AOL is free as well. But, I've, it's crazy. Um, and without proof, you really can't do much, and I'm not an IT expert, so it's like almost like chasing a ghost, basically, or like dancing with one, right? Like imagine dancing with a ghost, you can't hold the hands. You're like, come here. And it's like, you know, unless it's Casper. I think Casper became like a real person in the end of the movie, right? If I remember correctly. It was Nina Ricci, and I forgot who was the actor who played Casper, but anyways, but that's what it felt like, or it still feels like. And sometimes I wonder, I go, what really went on? And even people that I met later on who I thought would be people that would be supportive of me and help me ended up turning out to be the opposite and maybe turned into an enemy. Um, a lot of psychological coercion and gaslighting and spiritual warfare and stuff like that. I think that was also played a part in it. Um, but I was living in the state I was that I grew up in, and then I basically left that. I was studying to be an occupational therapist, and I had to leave that because I was so scared to be in that state that I was living in, and then I kept moving and moving and moving. And everywhere I went, it was this. So there's this blanket term called gang stalking. It's not like you're stalked by a gang. So basically, the idea is like if you piss somebody off, or like let's say you work for a company and you you expose something, or like you not to say you stir the pot, so to speak, but you do something that's not in accordance, like you stand up for something, right? Or it could be like an ex-boyfriend of yours. Anybody could be literally, Bonnie, stop ever. Anyone could be targeted, right? Um, there's this also another term which I don't like to associate myself with. I'm very big on narratives that you tell yourself in your head because, again, I said your inward dialogue that goes on, right? That reflects outwardly in your reality, whether you believe it or not. It does. So I don't like to. I was for a bit of time. Bonnie, eso no se hace. Bonnie, stop. I'm sorry, my dog is. I don't know what she's smelling underneath. Bonnie, yeah, para, come here. My dog is smelling something underneath the kitchen sink, and I don't know what she's smelling. Um, but anyways, so and tissue. Um, I'm sorry, that might have been a little gross, but I apologize. Um, it's so it goes, right? If you go down the rabbit hole of the internet, right? The wonderful gift of the internet, and you start to Google stuff, you're like, why is this and happening? Because all this stuff, my phone was acting up, it was getting really hot, it would flash a lot, my emails would be like deleted right when I turn on my phone. I was getting a lot of spam text messages too at the time and spam phone calls. So I'm like, maybe my stuff is on somewhere or whatever. I did get LifeLock. I got all these different things. I went to Apple to try to get it fixed. They really couldn't find anything. So I'm like, oh my God, is it really all in my head? Did it really happen? But then I noticed, and I would take screenshots, my AP addresses, different places, weird stuff would show up on my YouTube um, accounts, like about murders, serial killers, like really ominous, scary stuff. Stuff that like I don't I don't look up. I don't look up, hey, what is it? Let's hear, I don't do that. I was very much like I was into and I still am like dance videos, rescue animals, like cute stuff like that. Um and yes, I have watched porn. Who knows, maybe it's because I watched a porn video one day. Who knows? Um but I was this it got worse. Like literally I was when it got really weird was when I was living in Miami. I was, and I swear to God, I tell myself, was I imagining this? I was being tailed, or like there were three cop cars, two on the side, one in the back. I was seeing these big SUVs, like weird stuff, weird phenomena that's not what you experience day to day, just in life, right? Like it's just you don't. That's not, Um, and then so I went on the rabbit hole of Dr. Google, and I found on Quora there's like this whole community of individuals called targeted individuals. I'm like, what is this? At first you're like, these are a bunch of crazy people coming together to just talk shit about blah 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 blah, whatever. They're angry, they're disgruntled at their employers. And then I started to really I looked into some things, and I was like, man, I was like, this is like what's happening to me. And then I tried to tell my parents. This is where it gets really weird. My parents, I would say, are the, and I'm sorry, this is where I always want to cry because every time I mention my parents, it's like this point of contention that's like a dagger to my heart. Because I literally had the best childhood. Um, I don't know if it's just, so every time I present to them that this thing was happening and I was seeing this weird phenomena, um, it was like, it was just, I'm so sorry. Every single time. It's so funny because you think you go to therapy and you heal and you're like, nope. Because when I say I had the best parents in the world, I literally had the best parents in the world. And imagine like the people who raised you, basically, who gave you everything, discredit you and make you like, I'm so sorry. I don't want to, I brought my tissue because I mean, that was because of mucus, but um, like imagine people that like just, I always said if anything ever happened to my parents, I would take a bullet for them. I was the kind of daughter that basically like I would go all out for birthdays for my family. And like I bought my mom flowers. I decorated the kitchen with balloons and confetti on the table. I have pictures of it. I would buy Misha's cake. Misha's is a really big bakery, a well-known bakery in Florida, and they had I would get a like my dad loves tennis, so I once made the cake. I asked him, can you do it yellow with like white trim? My mom loves the color purple, and I got the cake to like royal, like a royal purple-ish color, right? And like a gradient. I went all out. I asked them to do confetti sugar. I there's my mom loves the calendar Mary Englebright, so every year I'd get her a Mary Englebright calendar. Um, if my since my dad loved tennis, I'd try to get him gift cards to the tennis store, like in Miami. Um, he loved Andrea Bocelli, um, that kind of music and stuff, and cooking. My dad loved cooking, so I'd always buy cooking stuff. And at the time, I didn't give a shit about cooking. Um, but like, this was where it got really weird. I would tell them that so and so this is happening, and it wasn't like I'm so like I've like I care about you. I feel like it wasn't an empathetic approach. It was like you need proof. Like I was told, hire a personal investigator. Like I remember my dad very distinctly waving me off, like you made it up. For I didn't think I was gonna cry. I always think I'm okay, and then I'm like, no. I talk about it, and then I get really sad. And I was told get a PI. You made it up. That guy doesn't know shit about you. The person that I thought I was seeing, certain places. I was told you need a psychiatrist. Um, and nothing prepares you for like, because my parents were super supportive through everything that I've done, everything. When I wanted to quit like musical theater or whatever, because it didn't feel right for me, they were okay with that. Um, when, like, if I was sick at school, my dad would be the first one to come and like pick me up from school, no questions asked. My mom would be, we'd be so silly whenever I'd go um into like a dressing room and we'd go to like Ross or Marshalls or Mason's or something. My mom, we would be, going through the aisles like in Dayland Mall trying to find like clothes and stuff. And like we would be like in the dressing room, and I remember there was sometimes I couldn't get the things over my head and we would just be cracking up. Um, we were the type of family, we would go to like dinner almost every other day. We would go out to dinner to a different restaurant in Florida, in Miami. We had family friends like every Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. We would go with them to dinner to different places. I had a really blessed childhood. I was really privileged. And I felt bad that other people didn't have that kind of upbringing that I had. But anyways, I was told that I made it up, it wasn't happening. That was really hard because these are the people who it's 29 years like of my life, like, and they were looking at me like I was like crazy, and I was like, I wouldn't make something up like that about somebody, about stalking and hacking. And then my dad was like, oh, give me your phone, I'll help, whatever. And I told him, I was like, you won't be able to figure it out. I was like, you're not a tech person. I was like, you won't be able to do that. So I reached out to like, my coworkers and stuff, and I went on Dr. Google. I tried to Google stuff, and it was futile. I couldn't. I went to law enforcement. No, like nothing, nothing. The weird stuff kept coming up. Like it got worse. Like I have it on my phone. Some of the stuff that would come up. It was